Hello, dear friend. Let's talk about grace. Not just as a concept, but as a lifeline. We've all been there, right? Staring down a challenge, feeling utterly inadequate. I remember a time when I faced a daunting task, a speaking engagement that filled me with dread. Fear threatened to cripple me, whispering doubts I could barely silence. But then, grace intervened. Not in a booming voice or a miraculous event, but in a quiet assurance that settled in my heart. It reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to my performance but to a love far greater. That's the beauty of grace, isn't it? It meets us in our inadequacy and whispers, "I've got you." That experience, etched vividly in my memory, taught me a profound lesson. Our weaknesses are not limitations but invitations. Invitations to experience the boundless, empowering grace of God. When we acknowledge our fragility, we open ourselves to a strength that transcends our own. We often perceive weakness as something to hide, a flaw to be masked. But what if it's in those very cracks that grace seeps in, making us whole? Think of a mosaic. Its beauty lies not in uniform perfection but in the unique fragments that come together. Similarly, our flaws, our struggles, they become part of the intricate tapestry of our lives when touched by grace. Grace doesn't erase our weaknesses, it transforms them. It doesn't promise an easy life, but an abundant one. An abundant life lived in the joyful surrender of our limitations, knowing that in our weakness God's strength is made perfect. It's a paradox, isn't it? That in yielding our self-sufficiency, we discover true power. The Apostle Paul, a towering figure of faith, understood this paradox well. He spoke of a thorn in his flesh, a constant source of pain and struggle. We don't know the exact nature of his affliction, but we see its impact in his life. Yet instead of despair, Paul discovered an empowering truth. God's grace was sufficient for him. Paul's thorn, his weakness, became a conduit for experiencing God's strength. It kept him humble, reliant on grace, and acutely aware of his need for God. This dependence, born out of weakness, fueled his ministry and allowed him to accomplish extraordinary things. Section 4. When weakness becomes a conduit for grace. Paul's story reminds us that our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities, are not anomalies to be ashamed of, but opportunities to experience the transformative power of grace. They become channels through which God's strength flows, empowering us to live beyond our limitations. Think of it like this. A seed needs the resistance of the soil, the apparent weakness of being buried, to sprout and grow. Similarly, our weaknesses, when surrendered to God, become the fertile ground where grace takes root and flourishes, leading to growth and transformation. Section 5. From Brokenness to Boldness. Stories of Transformation. Throughout history, countless individuals have discovered the empowering truth of grace in their weakness. Moses, a man who stuttered, was chosen by God to lead his people out of slavery. David, a shepherd boy, faced a giant with nothing but a slingshot and unwavering faith. These stories and countless others remind us that God chooses the weak things of the world to confound the strong. He sees not our limitations but the potential within us, waiting to be ignited by His grace. When we surrender our weaknesses to Him, He transforms them into instruments of His power and love. Section 6. Finding your strength in the embrace of grace. So, dear friend, embrace your weaknesses. Don't hide from them. Don't be defined by them. Instead, bring them to the foot of the cross and lay them down. Allow God's grace to wash over you, to fill you with His strength and love. Remember, you are not alone. God is with you always. And in your weakness, His grace is more than enough. It is in those moments of surrender, of acknowledging our need, that we discover the boundless, empowering grace that transforms and uplifts. Go forth not in your own strength, but in the unwavering, life-giving grace of God.